Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Micaiah, and today I'm sharing the genogram I made for my family. And you can see it here. I'll reference different parts of it as I talk. I'm going to keep this super relaxed and personal because that's honestly the only way I can do this without feeling awkward. And this is the main genogram up here, and then this is my key up here. So as you can see, circle equals female, square is male. I put the birthdays up in the corners if I knew them. Some of my family I don't really talk to that much, and so I just kind of had to leave some stuff blank. Um, this means mental health, deceased. I only have one deceased person, and that's down here. And then, yeah, so this is the key. I can come back up here or clarify. So, but I'm just going to keep it on this for now. So, this is my main genogram. So, this is my three generation genogram. I included both sides of my family, grandparents, parents, sister, and me. And again, you'll see the circles are for women, the squares are for men. I also forgot to mention that um, the red dots mean Welsh, and the blue squares mean French. So yeah. Um, the funny thing about making this was realizing how many of these relationships I actually lived around because I grew up on our family property, so it wasn't just history, it was daily life. So let me start by giving you a sense of what growing up was like, because that honestly shaped so much of my family's organization and dynamics. But one of my favorite memories is when my dad built a little treehouse in our yard, and my sister and I helped him. And by helped, I mean we held nails and pretended we knew what we were doing, but Dad always treated it like real help. So he'd show us how to hammer things and do all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I don't know. But on my dad's side, his parents, Janice and Alan, are pastors, and my dad has one brother named Joel. And it's honestly a pretty small, very structured family system. And I didn't really depict it, but the relationships between everyone are like pretty stable. There's no distance or broken relationships. It's a very like, I wouldn't say close knit, it's just it's a very regular family. Everyone's got their own house and their own um, lives going on. So I don't really see my uncle much other than for like Christmas and that kind of stuff. And on my mom's side, things are a little bit bigger and more chaotic. And my grandma, Bev, had two marriages. The first one, she married Boyd Miller, who I never actually met. He apparently like did some bad things, and so my grandma divorced him when my mom was only 4 years old, and they had three kids together. So my mom and my uncle John and my aunt Shannon. And um, after she divorced Boyd, she met my step grandfather Tim, and then they had two kids together. So my mom has five siblings altogether. Um, yeah. Um, the difference between my mom's side of the family and my dad's side is that I think my mom's side of the family is they've got more personality and more noise and more memories. And my grandparents on my dad's side lived in Los Angeles most of my childhood, and this whole family lived all together in Reading. So I hung out a lot with my mom's side of the family. Um, yeah. So culturally, my family is mostly French and Welsh. I know I didn't include what my grandmother was because she is a mix of everything. She really is. She came, I guess, mostly European descent, but her family traces back to like the colonial days. So it's kind of hard. She's just pure American mixing pot, you know? But Boyd immigrated from Wales, so he had an accent. And um yeah, and my grandpa, his parents were from France. So, but even though there's immigration on both sides of my family, they are very Americanized. My French ancestors dropped the language and the traditions when they migrated here. They just wanted to speak English. They never spoke French again in the house as soon as they came to America. And yeah, so the cultural parts of both of these different places never really influenced me, but faith kind of has. On both sides of my family, they are Christian. And when I was a kid, we used to have little worship sessions at home with my pastoral grandparents. And my dad, he plays the guitar, and we'd sit together singing worship songs. Sometimes neighbors would come over, and it turned into this kind of informal Bible study. Everyone was giving each other words or encouragement, and I actually still remember like a lot of the different prophetic, words that I got as a kid that stuck with me. Those moments were really like simple, but so meaningful. And they were, I guess you could say they were a part of the culture that I did grow up in, which is the culture is Christianity. On my dad's side, faith is really tied to everything. It's expectations, communications, traditions, values. And on my mom's side, my grandma does believe. I I think my step grandfather also believes, but it's very loose. Like they don't go to church. Um, and maybe except on Christmas and Easter. And my aunts and uncles are all kind of the same. Like if you ask them, they would all say that they're Christian, but whether or not they all go to church, I really don't know. But I know that my mom and my dad, because of my grandparents, we grew up going to church like every week, and we participated in all these different kinds of like camps and whatever. And now as adults, I go to church not every week, but definitely like once a month at least. And my sister never goes anymore. And I think she's still a Christian, but I never hear her talk about it much. So, yeah. And okay, so when I think about emotional climate and communication, it's like looking at two different worlds. Because on my um, parental side, it's very formal than structure. Family dinners with them mean you sit at the table, you use your manners, you're quieter, and you don't say anything goofy or wild. And they're loving just in a very pastoral, loving way. Like, I'll pray for you, kind of thing. And on my maternal side, it's so different. No one sits at a table when we get together because there's no room at the table. And so everyone just kind of grabs plates and sits on couches, floor, outside, wherever. And I just remember like everyone laughing, making jokes, talking to each other, playing games. And there'd be like the occasional drama, fight, or whatever. But I don't know. I just remember it being chaotic in the best possible way. And I think growing up in those two different environments definitely contribute to how I communicate and how I relate to people. So I can be in a more chaotic environment and I can also function in a very structured environment. So with family problems, like any family, mine had its share of mental health struggles. As you can see, um this dark black square means mental health struggles. There's a lot of like depression and anxiety and ADHD and other things in my family. And yeah, and there's also been a little bit of conflict with my grandma's marriages. She also divorced, I forgot to mention this, but she also divorced my step grandfather. So now she's single again, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, any patterns that I did find were definitely patterns of mental health and stuff. Even though my grandma had two divorces, each of my mom's siblings are all They all got married once and they haven't been divorced. So I didn't include their spouses or their cousins, but I do have a lot of cousins because each one of these aunts and uncles had at least two or three kids. So, but I didn't want to make this too complex. And if I had to pick one strength my family gave me, I think it would definitely be resilience. The clearest example of this was actually in the last year or two when I went through my own mental health struggles. My parents really pulled together and they advocated for me, supported me, and helped me stabilize and made sure I was safe. And that time really showed me how strong my family is when things get hard. And it made me realize resilience isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet and consistent support over time. So the therapeutic concept I chose is Bowen's differentiation, which is basically staying connected to your family while still having your own emotional boundaries. And even now, as an adult, I still struggle with having emotional boundaries with my family since we do live on the same property and we are very closely connected physically and emotionally. So, yeah, learning how to navigate that even as an adult is difficult. And especially as a kid, it was still kind of the same way. Like my dad would go through depressions, and I had to figure out how to take a step back and take breaks and understand that his tone and wasn't about me and it was about the depression. And talking to my mom really helped me understand what was actually going on with my dad when I was younger, and he was having depression symptoms, and that helped me stay connected without getting overwhelmed. And honestly, that's exactly what differentiation is. So I think this skill is carried over into how I handle relationships in general. And yeah, I want to practice therapy someday, so I think that will be helpful. So, and a huge part of why I want to become a therapist comes from watching people I love struggle. I don't mean that in like a bad way, but I mean like my dad with depression and my mom with depression and my sister with anxiety and even my own battles, which I've mentioned before, I do have bipolar and I was hospitalized for it. So being surrounded by, just regular people with regular struggles, that made me, I want to understand people and I want to help them and I want to figure out how to break cycles and make things easier. I've seen how powerful support can be and I want to give that same experience to other people. But anyway, so that's my genogram and a little window into how my family works and how it has shaped me. And doing this assignment honestly helped me see things a little more clearly. I feel like we've been doing genograms in a bunch of classes, so this was something that I've been familiar with for a little while. But it's not just patterns, but it's also like the strengths and the way these experiences show up in who I am. So thanks for listening, and I'm excited to see all of your guys' presentations. But yeah, okay. Bye. I don't know how to stop this, but I'll figure it out. Okay, bye.